So far in this channel, I've only really talked about plants and the effects that it's had on humans and on the environment. Today we're going to be talking about an invasive animal that has taken over the Florida Keys and has done a lot of damage, and talk about the unique way that the state of Florida is trying to minimize some of the impacts that this invasive species is having on its ecosystem and the impacts that it's going to have on the local economy. Today we're going to be talking about the invasive lionfish and the unique way that the state of Florida is trying to manage it. Invasive species management is a really interesting topic. There is this very common graph that I'll put up right now that shows the amount of effort that's required to work on an invasive species the longer that it's been established. So very early on, you can have the hope of eradication. If it's very early on, you can put in a lot of effort but be able to eradicate the species fully. But the longer it goes on, the less likely it's going to be able to eradicate it. And as it goes on, it becomes not feasible. We've gotten to the point with lionfish that is a species that escaped into the Gulf of Mexico back in the 80s, I believe, as a result of the aquarium trade. And since it's been established for so long, it is not likely going to be able to be eradicated fully. So we have to look at how we're going to be able to manage it going forward. That is a good mix of government funds, because you're not going to have an unlimited amount of funds to try to tackle this project, but also something that's feasible to try to remove it. Lionfish is a species that loves being around coral reefs. They are a generalist predator, meaning they'll eat pretty much anything. There have been reports of being able to eat fish that are about 50% of their size because of their incredibly large mouth. There's been reports of them eating more than they can physically hold down at any given time, so they'll try to eat it, regurgitate it, even though the fish will be dead. And as a result, it has wiped out a lot of the native reef populations in the Florida Keys that have been thriving for the past thousands of years until recently. So this, in conjunction with the problems that have been happening with coral reefs with bleaching, has resulted in a huge loss of biodiversity in these coral reefs. Some studies that I found shows that a single lionfish can reduce larval recruitment of native fish by 79%, which is a huge number, in addition to a lot of the coral bleaching events that we've been seeing in the past couple of years. And the species that they target are some of the common prey sources needed by important economic species like grouper and snapper. Another fact is that they don't have any native predators in the Florida Keys. When you look at the species, they are covered in 18 venomous spines, which make it so that pretty much nothing can eat them. And they are pretty fearless when it comes to moving around the reefs because they know that they're protected. And so you don't have any native species that can control this. So as a result, you're going to have humans actually go out there and try to remove them. Put this together with the fact that the saltwater fishing industry in Florida is the second largest in the United States, and we have a huge problem. You have the economic impact, which a lot of times is the catalyst required to take action. If you have a species that's taking over an area that has very little economic impact, it's very difficult to get the people involved to feel motivated enough to take action. So this impact of the lionfish, in conjunction with some of the other things that have happened in the past 30 years that have really negatively impacted the saltwater fishing community, whether it's hurricanes, the damage that creates, oil spills, and red tides, this is something that the state of Florida decided they needed to take action on. So I've laid out the problem that the lionfish have created in these native ecosystems. So let's talk about some of the ways that you could go about managing this. I work in an area where the government pays contractors like myself to go out and remove and manage native ecosystems. With the Keys and the fact that they are much more difficult to get to because it requires diving and getting out there by boat, it's not feasible for them to go out and have the government pay to eradicate this species. So the best way of doing that without having this incredible high manpower is by recruiting the general public to try to help in these efforts. And so one of the ways that you can do that is with a financial benefit. So back in 2018, they created a bounty program for the lionfish where if you brought, I believe you needed at least 25 tails, you could bring it to a specific measurement point, which was very common on the major cities on the Florida coast. You get a financial reward that could be up to $5,000. So money talks. That's something that pretty much everyone knows. And having this bounty made it so people were a lot more likely to not only discuss the impacts of the lionfish, but also go out and actually act. Because if you're actually diving out there on the reefs already, you might as well try to bring some in that can recoup some of the costs of the dive gear, the gas to get out there. And it became a very profitable thing for people that were already going to be out there. In 2022, it seems like this bounty program has switched slightly. It seems like the financial impact may have been too large and they've kind of transitioned into something else that'll still be enticing for the general public that's already going to be out there. And the way that they're doing that in 2022 is they have these challenges where they have divers go out and collect a certain amount of lionfish tails to show that they were actually harvested. And if you get to the tier 1, you get a special coin. The special coin is interesting because it allows you to take one more spiny lobster for your limits. In 2022, the limits for the spiny lobster were 6 per person per day. If you are talking to a fisheries and wildlife person and you have this coin, it allows you to have a total of 7. So it's for people that are already going to be out there, it gives them an incentive to harvest some of these species during the given challenges. It'll be interesting to see how this affects the lionfish populations going forward, but anytime you can incentivize the general public to go out and remove these species, it's going to be pretty valuable. So until we can have some long-term data on how these bounty programs are going to affect the lionfish species, some of the ways that you can help is by eating lionfish. I've been to Florida plenty of times, and I'm starting to see more and more often that lionfish are being served on the menu. The problem is that it's very difficult for fishermen to go out and specifically target them unless they are going to be diving already. So a lot of the times you'll see menus with lionfish on it, it shows that if it's available. So you don't have this infrastructure set up to reliably bring in lionfish as a food source, but it's a pretty decent fish. It's just difficult to get. So the more and more pressure that we can get put on fishermen to target it, it'll be more beneficial and it'll be more likely to be found on menus in the Florida Keys and, expanding further in the United States. So this is the story of the lionfish that have taken over the Florida Keys and the reefs of that region in a very economically important area for the local economy. You've had these bounty programs put in where in 2018 it was a bounty with a dollar amount that could be up to $5,000 per year. And in 2022 they've transitioned to including the limits that you can bring for the spiny lobster. So they're trying to a variety of different ways to motivate the general public, and it's going to take a couple years to see the actual impact on the lionfish populations, but I think it's a great step forward to get the general public excited about removing an exotic and invasive species like this. Let me know if you have any other topics you'd like me to discuss in future videos. If you made it this far, I really appreciate it. Hit that like and subscribe button, and I will see you in the next video.